Yeah. So I slipped up several times during my episode called The Real Conjuring by calling demon hunter Ed Warren Earl Warren. Earl and Lorraine. Earl and, Earl Warren. So Earl and Lorraine Warren. So tonight, I'll cover the man that was clearly on my mind that day, Earl Warren, former California governor, U.S. Supreme Court justice that presided over one of the most progressive eras in American history. Warren was an extremely well-respected politician and Supreme Court justice, but his history was also marred by a few significant controversies. As we know here on Deep Fat Fried, history is full of complex figures, and a man is capable of both doing great things and carrying great sins. Stay tuned, and let's learn about Earl Warren tonight on Deep Fat Fried.
Fucking Warren,
Earl Warren, man. Pretty crazy life, as you'll see.
Name of a well-known communist.
It better be crazy, Paul.
Well-known
it's
communist.
Pretty crazy.
Better be fucking crazy.
I think you'll be shocked exactly how much crazy American history Earl Warren managed to involve himself in.
Oh, shit. He's embroiled in all kinds of shit.
Oh, yeah. He was all over the place.
Fucker was crazy, man.
So Earl Warren was born in L.A. On March 19th, 1891. Throughout most of his childhood, he and his family lived in Bakersfield, which is the worst place in California. Maybe back then it wasn't.
Yeah, maybe it was better then, but now Bakersfield is like you might as well just fucking go to hell or something. It's like
you might as well. Yeah.
I mean, it literally is like the most festering shithole possible. Certainly
the worst place I've ever been in California. Now I've been worse places in other states, but
what's the one Corn is from?
Corn?
Bakersfield.
That's
Corn
it,
is
right?
from Bakersfield. Yeah,
They're from Bakersfield, dude. Dude, I would form a rock band to get out of Bakersfield too.
Dude, I drove through Bakersfield once.
We saw Tool there.
That's true. You're right. We went to Bakersfield. Bakersfield sucks.
It's ass. But maybe back in the day, it was a nice little town. Who knows? His dad was a railroad employee in Bakersfield. His determination to be a lawyer dates before his high school days when he listened to criminal cases at the Kern County Courthouse. Warren was the son of Eric Matthias Warren, a Norwegian immigrant who worked as a railroad repairman, and Christine Hernland Warren, who immigrated with her parents from Sweden when she was a child. So Swedish immigrant parents. I'm trying to think.
This fucking shit.
Yeah, where's he at? Here's the family of Earl Warren, the man that more than a million California votes. Where is he at? I wonder.
It's very unclear which one he is.
Yeah, it doesn't really say which one he is in this.
I mean, it looks like 3 are girls, so there's 2 boys that he could potentially be there. Well, I guess there's also the older one.
The older boy, yeah.
Was he the older child? Who knows?
That one little girl on the right at the bottom just looks like she doesn't even want to be in the picture.
Both of the youngest ones look like they either just recently got in trouble or are just really bored by this whole thing.
It's crazy to me, when you hear some of these stories about some of these people that he wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age and stuff. You
didn't have those young age ambitions where you wanted to be this or that.
I mean, I did for sure.
Well, why is it weird when somebody wanted to be a lawyer?
I mean, just the fact that he knew exactly what he wanted to be at that age before he's even in high school, and like,
dude, some people are just
devoted himself to that. Like,
there are some people that are just like that, and you see them like, you know, usually at the top of their fields. Generally, it's like,
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, not many people get that clarion call of like, you are this thing and you must pursue this. You know,
one of my exes was that way. Like, knew from when she was really young that she wanted to be an accountant. And went directly at it and became an accountant, and you know what I mean? Like, I guess some people just know.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, I knew I wanted to do like something with like writing or entertainment and stuff, but like it was kind of more vague. Like, I wanted to direct movies is what I really wanted to do more than anything. But here I am hosting this podcast, so whatever. Silver medal, I guess.
Fuck their hopes and dreams.
Bronze. In, I don't know.
So this is a little bit of TJ Salt, like someone knowing what they want to do and be able to do it.
Yeah. So
I mean, of course, who's not going to be envious of that person?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, not many of us get that fucking moment of like crystal clear, like, boom, this is what I am.
No, I 100% agree with you.
You know.
So Earl Warren's father was blacklisted for a time following the railroad Pullman strike, which led to the creation of Labor Day. Earl Warren also worked for the railroad during his youth. His experience soured his view toward the railway. I think there's a picture, too. You can skip to the next one there, too.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
In his memoirs, he noted that his progressive political and legal attitudes resulted from his exposure to the exploitative and corrupt conduct of the railroad companies. So, yeah, a lot of he was far from the only person who found themselves moved radically left by how exploitative companies could be, especially in this era.
I marvel at the fact that they're still defenders of this kind of shit to this day. Like, it's like, how are you guys still on this side?
The robber barons have done well for us.
Yeah, we've already seen what the experiment of like unrestrained fucking oligarchy does in America, and had this horrible fucking multi-battle war for labor in this country. And it's like, can we not learn that this gets eventually it gets so bad that people can't or won't work and hit the streets?
Have to get to that point again, or could we just like maybe
isn't
not?
The old cliche, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it?
Yeah, I guess so.
So Warren attended the University of California, Berkeley, and he got a bachelor's and law degree. So he did all of his schooling at Berkeley. His political appetite was whetted by his work on the successful campaign of Progressive Party gubernatorial candidate Hiram Johnson. After graduating, he was admitted to the bar, spent 3 years in private practice, and in 1917, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving stateside during World War I, and rising to the rank of first lieutenant before his discharge. So he, didn't serve for very long, but, had distinguished service. Thereafter, he briefly worked with the California State Assembly before becoming deputy city attorney for Oakland, California. That's in the Bay Area, for those that don't know. In 1920, he took up the post of deputy district attorney for Alameda County. 25 to 26, he served out the remaining year of his district attorney's term of office, and in 1926, he won a full term as Alameda County district attorney. So
thus far, his life has pretty much just been a steady upward climb,
and it never really stops.
Ranks. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously he becomes a Supreme Court justice, so he does reach that pinnacle. But like, thus far, I mean, maybe there was hardships along the way, but based on what's presented here, pretty relatively smooth sailing, just gliding.
Well, the major events of his life and his profession have so far just been ascended.
Yep. During his 14 years as a DA, Warren developed a reputation as a crime fighter. As a prosecutor, Warren was sometimes accused of high-handedness in his methods, but in 13 years and thousands of cases, ranging from murder to, malicious window breaking, he never had a conviction reversed by a higher court. So that's pretty fucking, that says something.
That's pretty astonishing that just shows a very sound legal mind and very conscientious of the process of which these things can be overturned on appeal. Because, you would figure,
darkness imprisoning me, all that I see, absolute horror, I cannot live, I cannot die.
See, I haven't had this charmed life as Earl Warren. I have that as my ringtone.
Yeah. How dare you even speak the name of Earl Warren, you disgusting pig.
Earl Warren was a Republican.
Steak, buddy.
That's true.
Steak, buddy.
Yeah.
He was a Republican, although, if you watched our episode on the party switch,
yeah,
you know that Republicans didn't used to be Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, like the parties
they were more liberal, as you would say back then.
They were more of the party that pushed for the progressive
the
side
Southern
of things
Democrat is what, if you think about that character in a movie like Whip Them Negroes over there, they were Democrats.
Like,
Which is why you have a lot of Republicans say like the party of slavery was the Democratic Party.
True. But I mean, look at where the geographic region was the South, and what does that vote now?
Well, I'm sorry, TJ. That's the liberals for you.
Yeah, damn liberals.
Liberals always wanted slavery.
So he had broad bipartisan support because he was kind of a centrist and leaning towards liberalism, which, being a fucking court justice is probably pretty good, right?
Right.
Being somebody who can kind of ride that center area and try and come as close to justice as you think probably played a role.
My wish list would to have some like crazy ass leftist judges and shit, but center left is better than right wing fucking crazy.
Well,
sure.
Traditionalist fucking shit for sure.
So he served as district attorney until 1939, and he distinguished himself for his hard work for fighting corruption. He successfully prosecuted the county sheriff and several of his deputies for misuse of their power.
Dope.
Pretty cool.
Based.
Yeah, he just gets a fucking applause for that. He fucking got one of these corrupt ass fucking sheriffs and fucking threw his ass in jail. Good.
I'll do the Paul's Vosh based, my guy.
My dude. Very based, my guy.
Based. Yeah.
He also earned support within the Republican Party for prosecuting radicals, unbased, under the state syndicalism laws during the 1920s, and for securing conviction of labor union leftists in the 1930s. Very cringe.
Super cringe.
Ultra cringe, my dude. So you can see here that he really truly was a political centrist.
Well, he's a centrist. He's a grab bag, right?
He's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we'll see. There's some pretty big stains on his political career as we go through, as it continues to rise.
No one becomes Supreme Court justice without there's some fucked up shit along the way, because like you wield that kind of power, you're bound to fucking piss people off.
It's true. So he also earned support within the Republican Party, as I said. Okay, anyway, I read that already. This last point seems a bit contradictory to Earl Warren's claim that his father's involvement in the Pullman strike led him to more progressive ideals. But I guess goes to show that he was indeed a true political centrist and not a radical justice, which probably made him more viable to continue up the food chain. So in November 1938... Colbert Olson was elected as governor of California, the first member of the Democratic Party to hold this office for 44 years. So he was a very long-serving governor. He was the first member of the Democratic Party to hold this office for 44 years, right? So he was the rarest of birds among American politicians elected to high office. He was an atheist and a freethinker. He may be best known nowadays for refusing to say the words "So help me God" when he was sworn in, pictured here, substituting it with "I will affirm" as he took his governor's oath. So pretty based, my guy. Based.
Colbert Olson is cool.
Colbert Olson, based.
In 1938, that is astonishing.
The following year, Earl Warren, a member of the Republican Party, was appointed California's Attorney General. So another big, giant step up from DA of Alameda County to Attorney General of California. That's a pretty lofty, raise in power.
Higher and higher up that food chain, boy.
Yep. One of Olson's first acts was to pardon Tom Mooney, who was a trade union leader who had been convicted of a bombing which occurred in San Francisco in 1916. Although strong evidence existed that the DA at the time, Charles Fickert, had framed Mooney, the Republican governors during this period had refused to order his release. So in October 1939, Olson pardoned Warren Billings, who was a friend of Mooney's. So he went about pardoning these people who there was like a really strong case that they had been set up, you know what I mean, to be put away because they were labor agitators. Interestingly enough, Warren himself had disagreed with Olson's actions. As a member of the State Judicial Qualifications Commission, he blocked confirmation of Olson's nominee to the Supreme Court, Max Radin, a man he considered to be too radical for the post. So, he was like an impediment to this kind of more radical leftist governor as Attorney General of California.
Get out of Colbert Olson's fucking way, god damn it.
Well, I mean, if you're more of a centrist person and you're also someone that's looking at the legal side and legal principle, you're going to probably want you're probably going to reinforce the status quo more than anything.
Well, yeah.
You're going to kind of have to.
One would imagine, sure. The greatest stain on Earl Warren's political career is pictured here, probably. He was one of many voices that pushed for Japanese internment camps.
Remember, this is also the biggest stain on like FDR's legacy and shit too. So.
Oh man, yeah, not a great thing to push for.
So even a lot of even the most progressive president we've ever had, I guess, somewhat arguably, but not really.
Lock up the Jap. It's like, wait a minute, what?
Still implemented one of the most racist policies in U.S. history.
Yeah,
easily. So
maybe the most.
For those that don't know much about it, a quick synopsis. So after World War II broke out in Europe in 1939, foreign policy became an increasingly important issue in the United States. Warren himself rejected the isolationist tendencies of many Republicans and supported Roosevelt's rearmament campaign. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Warren organized California's civilian defense program as Attorney General, warning in January 1942, that the Japanese situation as it exists in this state today may well be the Achilles heel of the entire civilian defense effort. So once again, this idea that Japanese Americans were all here to sabotage our defense efforts. And
you notice that German Americans did not incur similar, you can't trust these Germans here. Can't trust them.
The Krauts will come for us. And actually, their
loyalty is with Hitler.
At that time, I believe German Americans made up the largest group of immigrants and people who were descended from Germans.
They didn't get thrown in internment camps.
Shocking.
One of those higher groups as well that was also allied with the Germans was Italians, and they were not, rounded
throw
up
them in
as
internment
Nazi,
camps either. Pretty
Nazi
weird.
or Mussolini sympathizizers. So it doesn't
hard.
really make a whole lot of sense.
It does if you fucking look at it from a fucking white lens,
racist
obviously
lens.
You're Italian, you're kind of white, so you're okay.
Italian, you're whitish.
Whitish.
German, you're definitely white. But these Japanese,
all saboteurs come to destroy the American way of life.
Let's say that skin tone there doesn't look all that white to me.
You
Give me internment camp.
You failed the melanin test.
Yeah,
go to the happy camp.
So Earl Warren became a driving force behind the internment of over 100,000 Japanese Americans without any charges or any due process. Though the decision to intern Japanese Americans was made ultimately by General John L. DeWitt, and the internment was carried out by federal officials, it was Warren's advocacy that played a major role in providing public justification. So he was kind of like the propaganda arm that sold it to white racist people who are also afraid of...
Obviously, a very one thing about this guy that's apparent to me is he's very persuasive because he won all of his legal cases, or most of them anyway, and none of them were ever overturned. He obviously was a smooth talker, just based on how successful and ascendant he's been. So if you need a guy to go out there and sell this idea to the American people.
I just said, this is the Achilles heel of the defense of the nation. So a lot of people who are scared, what's going to happen to us, these people will hurt you unless we lock them in these prisons.
Yeah, it's there's an imminent need that we have to do this radical thing that, it might seem unsavory in some respects, and but hey,
but for the good of all, we must do it.
For the good of all, this has to be done, right?
As we all know, too, hindsight is 20/20, and by early 1944, Warren had come to regret his role in the internment of Japanese Americans, and he approved of the federal government's decision to allow Japanese Americans to begin returning to California in December 1944. Well, how magnanimous of him.
Yeah.
So nice.
It's very easy to, for all you know, this guy's obviously a consummate politician and shit too. So, this could have been planned all along. When shit cools down, I'll come around. I'll be I'm contrite now.
Well, I'm sure at that point, Japan was pretty much on its last leg.
I think that, the Japanese Americans were pretty much the only people to ever get reparations from the U.S. government for a wrong committed against them. So
deservedly so.
Yeah.
I mean, so I mean, like, obviously there was like some like we shouldn't have done this, guys, kind of fucking sentiment going around.
Of course.
But, we still did it. So
Warren later said he, quote, has since deeply regretted the removal order and my own testimony advocating it because it was not in keeping with our American concept of freedom and the rights of citizens. No shit.
And that just never occurred to you at the time at all?
Never occurred to him at the time.
A bunch of people.
Whenever I thought of the innocent little children who were torn from home and their school friends and congenial surroundings, I was conscience-stricken. It was wrong to react so impulsively without positive evidence of disloyalty. Well, there you go.
Well, I'm glad you came around to it, but it doesn't really do that much good.
Yeah, a little late to the fucking to morality on that one. Damage already kind of done.
It's probably brilliant, though. You probably got a bunch of people who are Japanese to vote for him based on that. Like, look, like I was the one that said it was wrong. Didn't you say you should lock us up?
Despite this moral lapse that he clearly fucking, regretted later, he was elevated during the internment of Japanese Americans. He was elevated from Attorney General to Governor of California in the 1942 election. Mm-hmm. Though initially reluctant to run, Warren announced his gubernatorial candidacy in April of 1942. He cross-filed in the Democratic and Republican primaries, ran without a party label, and refused to endorse candidates running for other office. Based?
That's pretty cool.
Based?
I don't know if that, I didn't even know you could do that, honestly.
He cross-filed. Based. I didn't know you could do that either. Maybe that's something that was legal back then that they've since created rules against. I would imagine so. Otherwise, you'd see other people doing it. He sought voters regardless of party and stated, I can and will support President Roosevelt better than Olson, the Democrat governor at the time, and his mentor, ever has or ever will. Many Democrats, including Olson, criticized Warren for putting on a cloak of nonpartisanship, but Warren's attempt to appear above parties resonated with a lot of voters.
I mean, people are tired of the fucking duopoly then, just like they're tired of it now.
Well, I wonder why no politicians are fucking trying this out and rising above party to run.
Probably because there have been more safeguards and measures against it put into place since then.
Probably so.
I don't know.
That or they just don't want it to change. Yeah. In August, maybe. Warren easily won the Republican primary and surprised many observers by nearly defeating Olson in the Democratic primary. So he almost won both primaries. In November, he decisively defeated Olson in the general election, taking just under 57% of the vote. Pictured here is Governor Earl Warren signing the bill restoring Japanese American citizens' rights.
See what I'm talking about? That's exactly what I was saying. That was his thinking. Oh, I want their votes now, so let me go and be like a little olive branch. You guys look, what I took away from you, I give back.
He's got a couple of...
I was a real dick, you guys. I'm going to make this right.
He's flanked by a couple of token Japanese people here who I'm sure, along with their other, fellow American fucking countrymen, were super happy to have their rights restored to them by the very person who was like the front face of taking them away in the first place.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Whoops, Daisy.
Have some rights back. All Oopsie, right. Goddamn Daisy. Here you go. Take it.
So he is the only person to have been elected to the governorship of California for 3 successive terms. So in 1942, 46, and 1950. In 1946, he was the only governor in California history to win an election unopposed when he won the Democratic, Republican, and Progressive primaries. Think about that shit.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I'm everything.
Yeah, I want them all. Maybe
this
that's
guy's
why
obviously this guy's ultimate
this.
centrist kind of shit.
Yeah.
And obviously a very fucking smart politician because,
clearly,
nothing gets in his way. Even fucking after he, the dude literally is like, lock up them fucking Japanese people. And before you know it, they're like, I love the Japanese people. I've always loved them. They vote for me now.
Earl Warren is a really important person in California history. A lot of progressive things happened on his watch. Interestingly enough, one of the unsuccessful initiatives that he had as governor was trying to establish universal health care for everybody in California. This was back in the 40s.
I'm convinced that nothing is harder in the world than trying to get universal health care in America.
I think you're right.
I think that's like the most impossible daunting task.
I have complete political dominance. Can I do universal health care? No. It cannot be done.
It is the one thing we shall never allow. Like, okay.
So in his 3 terms as governor, he reorganized the state government, as I said, secured major reform legislation, modernizing the state's hospital system, prisons, and highways, and expanding old age and unemployment benefits. So
sounds like this is the kind of motherfucker they need to run for governor these days, honestly.
I don't know that they make this kind of motherfucker anymore, though.
I think you're right. Where is he?
Yeah,
where's Earl Warren?
The kitchen that they used to bake this type of motherfucker up in got closed down and turned into a Starbucks long ago, you know?
Gotcha.
Earl Warren was nominated as the Republican candidate for vice president of the United States by Governor of New York Thomas Dewey in 1948. Dewey and Warren lost that election to President Truman, which is the first and only loss, by the way, in an election Earl Warren ever experienced in his entire political career. So that's kind of notable. Most politicians have ups and downs in their careers. This kind of like meteoric rise story doesn't happen too often, you know? Oftentimes there's
this is like the first time this is the first time in this story where we've even seen him hit like an impediment.
And I mean, it was going up against Harry Truman, who was super famous in America as, you know, from World War II. So I mean, like, it's not even like really that bad of a loss.
I mean, it's definitely a tough race for sure.
I mean, he was in VP slot too, so it's like wasn't even thought of as like his loss.
Yeah, exactly. Primarily. It's like it's Dewey's loss.
Despite that loss, his national reputation just continued to grow, and he gained a strong following as a potential presidential candidate in 1952. His moderate position in the campaign against communism, so he opposed loyalty oaths for professors at the University of California. So he'd what little bit he could come out on it, he'd kind of come out against the kind of shit, the kind of like.
Yeah, he wasn't like, I mean, he was kind of like a soft, like, yeah, we don't need to do that shit. Probably also because of the stuff with the Japanese Americans and shit. He was probably a little bit like, we don't really need this kind of shit. And plus, obviously, he's a kind of guy that's trying to have like a super broad base of appeal. So, like, you're not going to see him take too many strong positions, except for ones that he knows are populist enough to appeal to everybody. That's why he does this whole I eschew the political parties thing, even though obviously he's more aligned with the Republican Party of the time. Right.
And his kind of like softer position on the anti-communism stuff left him a distant third behind Taft and Dwight D. Eisenhower by the time of the Republican National Convention. Nevertheless, Warren had hoped to secure the Republican nomination as a compromise candidate. So what he was kind of hoping was people would be so divided on these other two guys that he would show up and be like, look, I'm a little of him, I'm a little of him. So once again, like the ultimate centrist, right? Just kind of
he was trying to Warren it, dude.
Yeah. He's pulling another Warren.
Yeah, he was trying to
Elizabeth
I'm in the middle.
Warren it. I mean, it seems like he just wanted to be in the middle of everything. I mean, I can't blame him. I mean, it's basically like, look Joe Biden's political strategy and his rise in politics. Like Biden, if you look back in the 70s, was like bipartisanship, so it's like it's a proven strategy that other people have definitely borrowed from him. I mean, obviously, because I'm not saying I don't necessarily is the progenitor of bipartisanism, probably not, but to the effect that you're describing here. Hugely influential.
It seems like he was very good at it, though. So
he seems to be a guy that's a little bit ahead of his time in tapping into the kind of malaise and distrust that was building in people of these political parties and the people that had been long associated with them. And him kind of at least starting his career by floating above that certainly, I think, helped his political career a whole lot. However bright his possibilities may have seemed, Nixon decided to secretly campaign for Eisenhower despite his pledge of support for Warren. So Nixon, Tricky Dick, was like, I support you, Earl. I got my support. And then went around to everybody and was like, hey, vote against Earl. You know, what a piece of shit. What a double-dealing, two-faced piece of shit.
Scheming ass Eisenhower here, dude. He's like, yep, play them all against each other. Who ends up on top?
Well, this is all three of them here together. In gratitude for Warren's loyalty, Eisenhower considered Warren for several cabinet offices and later promised Warren the first vacant seat on the Supreme Court. So when Chief Justice Fred Vinson died suddenly on September 8th, 1953, Eisenhower...
Shit, suddenly, huh?
Yeah.
Warren's like, oh, I get that seat, huh? Okay.
Look, Eisenhower, I need that seat quick. Fred Vinson is dead.
Fred Vinson. Oh, he just suddenly fucking died.
Oh, it's tragic.
Oops.
And Fred Vinson was the Chief Justice at the time. So he was not only appointed to the court, he was appointed to the Chief Justiceship of the court. Or at least the interim Chief Justice, and he was confirmed by the U.S. Senate on March 1st, 1954. That's as a guy that, as a kid, before he was even a teenager, wanted to be a lawyer. At this point in his life, he has accomplished what many people would argue is the ultimate expression of that, right?
No, I mean, there's no higher court in the land. There's no higher fucking legal position you could possibly hold. I mean, honestly, in many ways, a Supreme Court justice is like equal to, or maybe even some instances more powerful than the fucking president, even though they're part of like a tribunal or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Right.
So, I mean, like, this is a position of just like absolute power that he will literally hold for the rest of his life. So,
yep. So by the early 50s, Warren became personally convinced that segregation was morally wrong and legally indefensible. I think we got a picture here for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We should.
Warren's leadership can best be seen in the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka decision. The most important by his court, and certainly one quite controversial among the American public at the time. So pictured as one of the protests outside of the Supreme Court. Race mixing is communism. When justices first discussed the case under Warren's predecessor, they were sharply divided, but under Warren, they ruled unanimously that school segregation was unconstitutional.
So he pretty much shifted the entire court towards his way of thinking.
I mean, striking down a lot of Jim Crow laws right there.
Earlier, when you kind of labeled him as a guy that seemed like he was really good at convincing people, this is another piece of proof, right?
Right. I mean, like he took a split court and like, no, you're unanimous now.
Yep. So the court rejected the separate but equal doctrine that had prevailed since Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896. So Warren, speaking for the court, stated that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, obviously. And the court subsequently called for the desegregation of public schools with all deliberate speed. Warren said so that was Warren's quote there. The unanimous decision was a direct result of Warren's efforts. This and other Warren court decisions furthering racial equality were the catalyst for the civil rights protests of the early 50s and 60s and the civil rights laws passed by Congress themselves, upheld by Warren's court, by the way. So Warren...
Which is a big deal.
Based, right? This guy's centrism, I mean, he was centrist politically, but when there was a cause in front of him that he genuinely believed in, he tended to get shit done.
Well, an interesting thing happens with Supreme Court justices because they play the political game to get to the Supreme Court. But once they're there, like, they don't have to play politics as much at that point. Now they can actually kind of just like do what they want. So sometimes guys that you think are going to be very conservative Supreme Court justices turn out not to be. Guys you think are going to be like more liberal Supreme Court justices might not be.
Yeah.
People tend to, once they're on the Supreme Court, all bets are off. All those restraints are gone because they no longer have to climb the ladder anymore. They've reached the pinnacle.
Yeah, it's a lifetime appointment. So the politics
they don't have to fucking be reelected. You're just on that fucker. So,
and that's kind of designed into the court's lifetime appointment thing, right? It allows you to shed any shackles of political jockeying and say what you truly think and not govern, but legislate how you truly think. Not even really legislate. Judge. I guess it is.
You're interpreting the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, you're interpreting the Constitution,
interpreting
and
the laws
and
legal precedents. Yeah, so it's the interpretation of the law.
Basically, it is sort of de facto legislation because,
absolutely,
obviously, you can make decisions.
Gay marriage became legal in the U.S. because those laws were found to be unconstitutional.
Supreme Court's like, nope, that's unconstitutional.
Right.
Gone.
Yeah, and then that was a great, social shift.
And then it's like there's not even a way to get around that. I think unless you pass a new fucking constitutional amendment, like the banning of gay marriage.
That's why people that are still interested in that. I think most people have moved on.
That's a non-starter.
Like they say, oh, we got to have a constitutional amendment to protect this, which you could do that, but it's gonna be very difficult.
I don't even know if we'll ever see another constitutional amendment in my lifetime. Maybe we will.
We might. You'd be surprised.
You never do know. Crazy times breed crazy happenings. In arranging a unanimous decision in Brown v. Board, Warren fully established himself as the leader of the court, obviously. He also remained a nationally prominent figure after a 1955 Gallup poll found that a plurality of Republican respondents favored Warren as the successor to Eisenhower. So Republicans wanted him to drop off of the court and run for president. Yeah. Eisenhower seriously considered retiring after a single term and encouraging Warren to run in 1956, but ultimately chose to run. Eisenhower ultimately chose to run after he had received positive medical report after his heart attack. So, despite that brief possibility, a split developed between Eisenhower and Warren, and some writers believe that Eisenhower once remarked that his appointment was the biggest damn fool mistake I ever made.
Oh well, you still made it, bitch.
Yep. Meanwhile, many Southern politicians expressed outrage, obviously, at the court's decisions and promised to resist any federal attempt to force desegregation.
Well,
a strategy known as massive resistance. Although Brown did not mandate immediate school desegregation or bar other separate but equal institutions, most observers recognized that the decision marked the beginning of the end for the Jim Crow system. So throughout his years as Chief Justice, Warren succeeded in keeping decisions concerning segregation unanimous. So when it came to this, it wasn't just Brown v. Board. Anytime a segregation issue came before Warren's court, it was unanimous.
Right.
Against segregation. So,
but I mean, clearly, if you read the Constitution, it's clearly as it should be.
So another important civil rights case, one that people don't probably recognize as often or as easily by its name. Chief Justice Earl Warren presided over Loving versus Virginia. So in 1958, two residents of Virginia, Mildred Jeter, a black woman, and Richard Loving, a white man, were married in the District of Columbia. The Lovings returned to Virginia shortly thereafter. The couple was then charged with violating the state's anti-miscegnation statute, which banned interracial marriage. The Lovings were found guilty and sentenced to a year in jail. The trial judge agreed to suspend the sentence if the Lovings would leave Virginia and not return for 25 years. Get on out of here, there, race mixer. Get on out of Virginia. Shoo, shoo. So on June 12th, 1967, the court issued a unanimous decision in the Lovings' favor and overturned their conviction. Its decision struck down Virginia's anti-miscegnation law and ended all race-based legal restrictions on marriage in the United States, basically with one fucking stroke. Because once you've established legal precedent that something is against the Constitution, all of these other miscegnation laws fall with it. So this case was cited as the legal precedent in the Obergefell versus Hodges Supreme Court case in 2015, which led to legalizing same-sex marriage nationwide in the United States. So you can see, like, not only immediately important in the time that he made the decision, but echoes of this decision continue even until today.
Right. It establishes legal precedent at that point.
Right. That is then cited in other cases for further expansion of people's rights. So
yeah, and it's a good legal precedent to set. It's like, hey, let's not be pieces of shit. Okay, cool.
Yeah, people should be able to marry who they want.
Hey, we have a precedent for people not being pieces of shit in this country. I don't know. That's good. We should fucking default to that.
Build on those positions.
Build on that.
Yeah.
So maybe in this next period of the Warren Court, Chief Justice Earl Warren took some pointers from the atheist California Governor Culbert Olson that we learned about a little bit earlier, who kickstarted Warren's own political career by appointing him attorney general. So in 1962, Engel versus Vitale held that the Establishment Clause prohibits mandatory prayer in public school. The ruling sparked a strong backlash from many political and religious leaders, some of whom called for the impeachment of Warren.
good luck. You can't. It's so hard to impeach a fucking Supreme Court justice. It might as well be. It might as well be impossible.
Yeah, it's ridiculously hard. Warren became a favorite target of right-wing groups such as the John Birch Society, as well as the 1964 Republican presidential nominee Barry Goldwater, who did real well if you know your American history.
Yeah,
it's actually blown out harder than pretty much any candidate in modern history.
Barry Goldwater, I don't know. Is there a guy that's ever lost by a bigger fucking margin?
Who ran against Reagan?
I know that I can't remember who it was that ran against fucking Reagan, but that guy got blown the fuck out too.
Yeah, it was Carter.
Well, Reagan replaced Carter, and
so Carter,
that was a blowout. But then there was
a huge blowout. Yeah.
Oh, his second term though it was just a.
His second term was a slaughterhouse as well.
I think the other guy, I forget who it is, only won like one or two states. Yeah,
can't remember who that was. But anyway, so Goldwater and Richard Nixon remained pervasive critics of Earl Warren, and they contributed to a decline in the court's popularity in the mid and late 1960s. So they managed to whip up all the racists and shit, and kind of turn public opinion against the court. So Griswold versus Connecticut had this, the Supreme Court strike down a state law designed to restrict access to contraception, and it established a constitutional right to privacy. So Griswold would provide an important precedent for the later case of Roe v. Wade, which disallowed many laws designed to restrict access to abortion. So you can see, like, these fucking...
Impeach Earl Warren, save our republic. Fuck you, Trump 2020 back in fucking 1950, whatever the fuck.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, you know. Every time I look at recent American history, I just see the same fucking sad playing out over and over.
Reminds you that, like, things have not changed as much as you might fucking think.
They haven't changed at all.
By the way, Lyndon Baines Johnson over Barry Goldwater was the 10th largest presidential landslide.
Oh, damn.
In 1964.
The results were actually, go up, TJ?
Yeah, the results were
486 electoral college votes to 52. The percentage of that is 90.3.
So he won with 90% of the electoral college votes.
Popular vote, he won 61%.
Won 61% of the popular vote.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Walter Mondale, by the way, was the person that Reagan beat the second time around. And that was 97% of the electoral college.
Is that the biggest blowout in American history?
No, the biggest blowout were the two times that George Washington ran unopposed.
Oh, well, all right.
But if you want the biggest blowout against an actual opponent, I guess you could say
James Monroe.
No, that he didn't. He was against no one too.
Oh, okay.
So the biggest blowout where there was actually like a fucking candidate running against them was FDR versus Alf Landon.
Dude, look at that fucking sign FDR's throwing up too, man. What a fucking gangster.
Yeah. FDR versus Alf. No one's going to vote for a dude named Alf, okay? But
it's
yeah,
FDR.
he won.
It's Alf.
His name was Alfred. He should have went by Alfred, you know.
It's me, Alf, guys.
Anyway, FDR won 98.49% of the
I guess he didn't win
college votes.
He didn't win Maine or Vermont. Huge states.
Yeah. So
especially in the 30s.
Whoopsie daisy. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Just thought that might be a little interesting factoid to drop on you.
It is. So, as I said, all of Earl Warren's progressive rulings made him a target of the John Birch Society, which is named after the first American victim of the Cold War, who organized the impeachment campaign against him. Robert Welch formed the John Birch Society in 1958, a membership-based organization that proclaimed itself as dedicated to supporting free enterprise and to fighting what it saw as growing threats in the U.S. Constitution and to the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. So just, jingoistic.
Pump
nonsense.
the brakes on progress. Go back to the way it was where we could be a bunch of religious bigots. I don't like this no more.
This ultra-conservative group was founded on these three principles as described by the Society's founder. The United States faced an existential threat from international communist conspiracy hatched by an amoral gang of sophisticated criminals.
Wow, things really don't change at all, do
sound
they?
like Q to you?
Yeah, we're just stuck in the same fucking... We're stuck in a time loop. What's going on here? How many times are we going to go through this same shit?
Over and over again, because people just keep playing into it. By the early 1960s, the society had grown to some 100,000 members.
Oof.
At the time, it assailed such mainstream Republicans as Dwight D. Eisenhower and Earl Warren for their alleged failure to stem a purported communist conspiracy that the society claimed existed within the federal government. So it's Q. It's QAnon.
Yeah, it's QAnon. Yep. QAnon 1958 or whatever the fuck.
Yep. In 1966, Warren made another landmark decision when he ruled that criminal suspects could be informed of their rights before being questioned. Had to be informed of their rights before being questioned by the police. On June 13th, 1966, Supreme Court issued a split 5-4 decision in Miranda v. Arizona that overturned Ernesto Miranda's conviction, a very famous name if you live in the United States, based solely on his confession after 2 hours of interrogation. So he was arrested, interrogated, not informed of his right to have a fucking lawyer. He just kind of like scared as fuck. And remanded the case back to Arizona for retrial. 5 justices formed the majority and joined an opinion written by Chief Justice Earl Warren. The court ruled that because of the coercive nature of the custodial interrogation by police, no confession could be admissible under the Fifth Amendment, self-incrimination clause, and the Sixth Amendment right to an attorney unless a suspect has been made aware of those rights and the suspect has then waived those rights. So in his decision, Chief Justice Earl Warren wrote, "The person in custody must, prior to interrogation, be clearly informed that he has the right to remain silent and that anything he says can and will be used against him in a court of law. He must clearly be informed that he has the right to consult with a lawyer and to have a lawyer present with him during interrogation, and that if he is indigent, a lawyer will be appointed to represent him." So it's almost the Miranda reading verbatim.
Right. Well, I mean, because they wanted to make sure they adhered to this new
letter
legal
of the law
guideline that he had fucking laid out there.
Right.
Yeah, because like obviously prior to that, you know, if you weren't aware of your legal rights, you would just get fucked over by the system.
Right.
Because they would, you know, that you didn't.
And often people would.
Had no idea.
Yeah,
that he
what
had
happened?
Right. He had no idea he had a right to an attorney.
Yeah, what happened?
He had no
Tell
idea
us.
he had a right to remain silent.
And he probably had no idea that all the things he was saying candidly to these police officers were going to come up again in court and shit. I mean, there's a lot of people that have no fucking clue how the justice system works. And this case put the onus on the police to give people a basic education on their rights in the situation that they're being put in, which is you're being arrested, so you have these rights.
Yeah, this is something that, you know, is just you take for granted or whatever, but
totally fundamental, right?
Yeah, I mean, like without this, you have a legal system that's even more fucked up than it currently is. So.
Just think about what they can do to you. They can interrogate you for however long they want, not give you a lawyer, not give you access to a phone call, not give you, you know, they can torture you basically psychologically until you admit to things. How many people were railroaded before this landmark case? Think about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people still get railroaded anyway, but like it was a lot easier to railroad them back then because like if you're not aware of your rights, they're not going to tell you at any point that you have the right to an attorney if they don't have to.
Yep.
You know?
So thus, Miranda's conviction was overturned. The court decision by Chief Justice Earl Warren also made clear what must happen if a suspect chooses to exercise his or her rights. If the individual indicates in any manner, at any time, prior to or during questioning, that he wishes to remain silent, the interrogation must cease. If the individual states he wants an attorney, the interrogation must cease until an attorney is present. This actually sets us apart from Canada. In Canada, you're given a basic version of Miranda rights in Canada, but this whole clause about how the interrogation has to cease if you say that you want a lawyer or you're exercising your right to be silent, in Canada, they can say, all right, I understand that, but I'm going to keep talking. So they just keep interrogating you.
A lawless land, if there ever was one.
So I see why you hate them up there, Scotty.
Yeah, they don't respect human rights, Paul.
What did you call them candidly before we started the show? Snow N-words? What did you call them?
I don't recall that, Paul. But I just want to say that we've seen several times the history of Canada and the laws which they uphold. They're also you know, their head of state, Paul, technically the Queen. They are a monarchist regime to the north of us. Invade. But I push no action. I say invade, but only in a non-violent way. Invade their hearts with the American spirit.
So the dissenting justices in the Miranda case, accused the majority of overreacting to the problem of coercive interrogations and anticipated some drastic effect. They believed that once warned, suspects would always demand attorneys and deny the police any ability to gain any confession. Obviously, this slippery slope argument was unfounded, as today 97% of criminal cases are resolved by a plea bargain, which is a form of confession, despite the benefits of Miranda v. Arizona. So,
right. So this did not impair the police's ability to get confessions. Look, it didn't even impair their ability to fucking railroad people.
A lot of times people will blab even after being advised of those rights. People will still blab. Also, a lot of times when you get arrested by the police, like they usually have look, in our society, they usually have you by the balls. That's the only reason they want to arrest you, because they want to make the case public and be like, yeah, we're putting this asshole away. Yeah. So usually there's pretty good evidence against you, which is why most criminal trials end with conviction or a plea deal.
Right. So Miranda was viewed by many as a radical change in American law, since the Fifth Amendment was traditionally understood to only protect Americans against formal types of compulsion to confess, such as threats or of contempt of court. It has had a significant impact on law enforcement in the United States by making what became known as the Miranda warning part of routine police procedure during arrest to ensure the suspects are informed of their rights. The concept of Miranda warnings quickly caught on across American law enforcement agencies, who came to call the practice in modern times Mirandizing, and you probably heard it called that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When the Supreme Court case... While his Supreme Court case changed the course of U.S. criminal procedure, Ernesto Miranda's own fate would not be so altered. In his retrial, pictured here, his girlfriend, Twyla Hoffman, offered testimony against him, revealing that he had told her about his crimes while he was in prison. So in October 1967, Miranda was convicted and sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison. He was paroled in 1975, but just over a month later, on January 31st, 1976, he was stabbed to death in a bar fight in Phoenix. So,
yeah. Well, he made a greater impact with his criminal activities than a lot of people have done with honest ones. So, I mean, I guess that's, he didn't live a great life, it sounds, but, his legal case trying to fight for people's rights and the expansion of rights, in a sense, even though it probably wasn't his goal, inadvertently ended up having a massive impact on the way we're policed. Because, it's kind of weird because we think about it like, if you get pulled over, like, you have the right to remain silent. But before that, it's just like, what happened? What are you doing? You're guilty. It's like they can just pretty much do whatever the fuck they wanted to you. So yep. I'm glad that legal precedent was established, and Warren obviously had a major hand in that.
So this is a little piece of irony for you, I guess, here. Officers would detain two acquaintances who were with Miranda the night that he was stabbed for questioning. Before asking each about the evening, they recited the Miranda warning in Spanish to them. So both men were released after questioning. Later, witness accounts would narrow down the investigation to one of the men, but by that time, the main suspect had fled and was never apprehended. No charges were ever filed in Miranda's murder. Perhaps it's a bit ironic that Ernesto Miranda's murderers may have gone free because of the Miranda rights his case established. So,
yeah, that's pretty funny.
So let's move forward to another kind of tumultuous time in American history, because, of course, Earl Warren was Chief Justice when JFK was assassinated. Here you see Earl standing with the Kennedys. So after the Republican Party nominated Richard Nixon in 1960, Warren privately supported the Democratic nominee John F. Kennedy. Of course, publicly you can't, as a Chief Justice. I guess maybe you could, but it's probably not in good conscience.
I've never heard of that being done.
No. But he privately supported John F. Kennedy, and some people speculate that was partially motivated by Nixon backstabbing him in the 1952 presidential election.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Chief Justice Earl Warren became personally close to Kennedy after he was inaugurated. Warren later wrote that no American during my long life ever set the sights higher for a better America, or centered his attacks more accurately on the evils and shortcomings of our society than did Kennedy. Pictured here is Chief Justice Earl Warren with JFK, Jackie Kennedy. Warren would later head the commission that investigated the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. However,
right, the Warren, yeah, okay,
the Warren Commission.
He's the Warren Commission. Warren. I didn't even fucking put that together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is actually kind of a slippery topic in and of itself.
Right. A lot of fucking questions around that. Sure.
Of course. Absolutely. So let's dive into them.
As major events of this caliber tend to invite a lot of scrutiny. So
as well they should.
Yeah, absolutely.
After the death of John F. Kennedy in 1963, Lyndon B. Johnson was appointed president. He immediately set up a commission to ascertain, evaluate, and report upon facts relating to the assassination of the late President John F. Kennedy. Seems pretty fucking normal. That you would expect that to be the first act of a president that was inaugurated for this reason.
Makes perfect sense.
Johnson asked Justice Earl Warren if he would be willing to head this commission. Warren refused at first, but it was later revealed that Johnson guilt-tripped him into accepting the post, which, if you know anything about Johnson, he was extremely adept at. It made him a really good politician because
he was the master of the guilt trip.
He knew the dirt that people had. He knew how to push people's buttons. He was good at psychologically manipulating and holding favors over people's heads and shit. He was just, he was good at it. Johnson asked Justice Earl Warren if he would be willing to head the commission. Warren refused at first, but it was later revealed, he guilt-tripped him. The main reservation Justice Warren had was that he believed that an investigation would lead to even more conspiracies about the JFK assassination.
Correct. He was 100% right about that.
Yep. Instead of the American people just accepting the results.
Obviously a brilliant fucking reader of mass psychology.
Indeed.
Like he just got it.
Warren also feared that it would tarnish his public reputation irreparably, and it did. How President Johnson convinced Justice Warren is revealed when Johnson tries to recruit someone else to the commission, this time Senator Richard Russell, who was chair of the Armed Services Committee, which had some oversight regarding the CIA, and an old-time friend and mentor of Johnson, whom he lovingly called Uncle Dick. Johnson said to him, Warren told me he wouldn't do it under any circumstances. So I called him and ordered him down here, and he told me no twice. And I just pulled out what Hoover told me about a little incident in Mexico City. And he started crying, and he said, well, I won't turn you down. I'll do whatever you say. Now,
brought up the Mexico City incident, huh?
Yeah, when I first looked into this, I thought, holy shit, man. Warren was down there maybe hitting up some underage prostitutes or some shit in fucking Mexico. Turns out it's actually way worse and way more frightening than that. Surprisingly, the incident in Mexico City was not a personal scandal of Earl Warren, but an explosive bit of information about Lee Harvey Oswald. So Amelia, who helped me research this, listened to the full 17-minute phone call with Uncle Dick. And this is the gist of it. In the president's telephone conversation with Russell, recorded in the White House by Johnson himself, Johnson says he showed Chief Justice Warren a file on a trip to Mexico given him by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. What the president says next makes clear that he's referring to the trip of Oswald to Mexico and his possible acceptance of money from the Cuban government. So earlier in the conversation, Johnson was trying to convince Russell to join the commission by saying all he would have to do is go over the Hoover report already made. Johnson then says that any revelation of this sort would make the public believe Castro and or Khrushchev were behind the assassination and make war inevitable. Johnson then lays this guilt trip on Warren, saying that unless he accepts the job as the head of the commission and implicitly helps cover up any evidence of a conspiracy between Oswald and communists, 40 million Americans would die in a nuclear war with Russia and Cuba. He threatened the American people with the same thing in a political ad that'll
he did.
be part of
this is sort of his favorite tactic, right? He loved that.
And he was good at it, too.
My finger's on the button. I guess we just got to go to war and have millions upon millions of Americans die. If you don't want that in your conscience, just do what I want.
So this is actually a candid picture of LBJ dressing down Earl Warren in his office. This is a very uncomfortably
look how in his face he is.
And the hands folded behind the back is a sign of actual tempered aggression.
And they both got that going on too.
Yeah. So according to Johnson, Warren then started crying and agreed to serve after he tells Warren, and I think you put on your uniform in World War I just as fat as you are and would do anything you could to save even one American life. So he just kind of called him out as a World War I person. Yeah. Saying, hey, you were willing to save an American life back then, but now 40 million Americans going to die in nuclear holocaust if you don't help us cover this fucking shit up.
Obviously, Johnson, I like I like his style too, because he knows how to fucking stick the knife in and twist that motherfucker until you do what he wants.
Well, this was a time, and like I really recommend you watch that movie. By the way, TJ, it's on HBO Max called All the Way, and it's got Bryan Cranston as LBJ. It's really good actually, and it kind of gives you a portrait of a dude that is exactly that, like an old school politician that knew how to leverage both promises and favors and little tidbits of information like this, and really knew how to put the fucking trip on people and get them to change their political position when he really needed it, which is what is cited for the do nothing Congress of, it's constantly like, oh, there's one or two holdouts. It's like back in the day, those two holdouts would have been getting this.
Yeah.
They would have been getting this treatment right here.
What you holding out, huh? Slowing shit down, huh?
Yeah, what the fuck you fucking me on this, you
Joe
punk?
Manchin would be in the Oval Office getting fucking like, okay, well, you're going to destroy all this shit. You're going to do this. We're going to fuck you over. There's going to be a problem. But now it's just like, what can we do? Can't do nothing.
Nothing we can do. Warren was personally involved in several aspects of the investigation. He supervised 4 days of testimony by Lee Harvey Oswald's widow, Marina Oswald, and was widely criticized for telling the press that, although her testimony would be publicly disclosed, quote, it might not be in your lifetime. He attended the closed-door interview of Jacqueline Kennedy and insisted on participating in the deposition of Jack Ruby in Dallas. Warren also participated in the investigation of Kennedy's medical treatment and autopsy. At Robert Kennedy's insistence, Warren handled the difficult task of reviewing the autopsy photos alone. Because the photos were so gruesome, Warren decided that they should not be included in the commission records. So the Warren Commission investigation ultimately culminated in an 888-page report presented to President Johnson on September 24th, 1964. This is actually a picture of that. This is Warren handing the report to LBJ, and you can see the tension between them has not eased. LBJ is not happy with him still. This is a pretty famous picture here because you can see the rancor and acrimony here. At least I can. The U.S. Congress passed Senate Joint Resolution 137, authorizing the presidential appointed commission to report on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy to the public, mandating the attendance and testimony of witnesses and the production of evidence. The commission concluded that the bullets that killed Kennedy and injured Connally were fired by Oswald in 3 shots from a rifle pointed out of a 6th-floor window in the Texas School Book Depository, and that Oswald acted alone. Oswald's life, including a visit he made to the Soviet Union, was described in detail, but the report made no attempt to analyze his motives. Additionally, the commission found that the Secret Service had made poor preparations for Kennedy's visit to Dallas and had failed to sufficiently protect him.
He got shot in the head, so I'd say so.
And an open-top fucking goddamn car.
Yep. And they concluded that Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner and kind of like organized crime figure, had acted alone in assassinating Oswald 2 days after his arrest, which occurred live on TV. So yeah, sure. All of this stuff, like what were Oswald's motives and shit? Who cares? What about Jack Ruby? What were his motives? You know what I mean? He
was mad. Yeah, he was mad. He killed him. That's it.
Yeah, it is.
So Justice Earl Warren turned out to be absolutely fucking right in his doubts that the investigation would be accepted by the American public. The Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald was a lone gunman failed to satisfy some who witnessed the attack and others whose research found conflicting details in the commission report. A number of conspiracy theories arose involving such disparate subjects as the Cuban and Soviet governments, organized crime, the FBI and CIA, and even Johnson himself. Some critics of the Warren Commission's report believed that additional ballistic experts' conclusions and a home movie shot at the scene disputed the theory that 3 bullets fired from Oswald's gun could have caused Kennedy's fatal wounds as well as the injuries to the Texas governor. In 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded in a preliminary report that Kennedy was, quote, probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, and that may have involved multiple shooters and organized crime. The committee's findings, as with those of the Warren Commission, continue to this day to be disputed.
You're never going to get answers on this shit, probably, by the way.
But he was right. The Warren Commission report became like a big dirty word in politics as a cover up and a scandal. And Earl Warren's name was forever attached to it. It's not the fucking, LBJ Commission. It's the Warren Commission.
The Warren Commission, the Warren Report.
And that was really the kind of like biggest piece of blackmail and guilt tripping that he held over Warren's head, LBJ, was like, you're putting your fucking name on this, dude. So whatever happens as a result of this, they're not going to remember it was me what fucking ordered you to do it. They're going to remember it was you what done it.
Of course.
And that's why LBJ being right as well. Reluctant to take the position.
He's like, I don't want to do this shit.
Well, I mean, enough political acumen to know, like, this is a fucking hornet's nest. You don't fucking play with this shit, because if you do, you're never going to have. No one's ever going to be satisfied with the official story. There's always going to be people, even if the official story is correct, are not going to be satisfied. And there's so many questions about the JFK assassination that could be fucking 10 episodes of the show. So there's just no way.
True. Do you know who he looks like here? Judd Nelson.
Somebody. Judd Nelson, huh?
Isn't that the name of the guy that played fucking Herman Munster? And
is it
the old guy in fucking
no, Judd Nelson is from The Breakfast Club.
Oh, okay. Well, what's that guy's fucking name then? What's the guy? He's in Pet Sematary. He's the old man. Don't go across that road.
He's also in My Cousin Vinny.
Sometimes, yeah. He's the
judge
in My Cousin Vinny. I can't remember what his name is. Anyway,
the fuck is his name?
What was his name?
TJ's no good at
looking it up. Hold on.
No good at research, TJ.
Don't go down that road. Hold on. Oh, that's a bad stretch of road there.
Fred Gwynn.
Fred Gwynn. There you go.
Yeah. Frederick Hubbard Gwynn, dude.
Trust me when I say sometimes dead is better.
That movie.
So by 1968, Warren was ready to retire from the court. He had hoped to travel the world with his wife, and he wanted to leave the bench before he suffered a mental decline, something that he perceived in both Hugo Black and William Douglas, his fellow old ass.
This continues to be a problem on the court to this day, by the way.
Yeah.
What's going on?
He also feared that Nixon would win the 1968 presidential election and appoint a conservative successor if he left the court later. So on June 13th, 1968, Warren submitted his letter of resignation to President Johnson, who made it official on the 21st of June, effective on the confirmation of a successor. In an election year, confirmation of a successor was not assured. And after Warren announced his retirement, about half the Senate Republican caucus pledged to oppose any Supreme Court appointment prior to the election. Once again, the sound fucking
I've never heard of anything like this contemporarily. This is all new.
Johnson's nominated Associate Justice Fortas, a personal friend and advisor to the president, as Warren's successor, and nominated federal appellate judge Homer Thornberry to succeed Fortas. Republicans and Southern Democrats joined together to scuttle Fortas's nomination.
Shocking.
Though the majority of the Senate may have favored the confirmation of Fortas, opponents conducted a filibuster, which blocked the Senate from voting on the nomination, and Johnson withdrew said nomination. Mm-hmm. Nixon defeated Hubert Humphrey in the 1968 presidential election and took office in January 1969. Though reluctant to be succeeded by a Nixon appointee, Warren declined to withdraw his letter of resignation. He believed that withdrawing the letter would be a crass admission that he was resigning for political reasons, which it probably would be.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Nixon did not solicit Warren's opinion regarding the next Chief Justice and ultimately appointed the conservative federal appellate judge Warren E. Burger. So he picked another Warren.
Yeah, there you go.
Earl Warren later regretted his decision to retire and reflected, if I had ever known what was going to happen to this country and this court, I never would have resigned. They would have had to carry me out of there on a plank. In addition, he later remarked on his retirement and on the Warren court, I would like the court to be remembered as the People's Court. Earl Warren retired in June 1969 after 52 years of public service as a prosecuting attorney, three-time governor of California, twice aspirant for the Republican presidential nomination, once nominee for vice president, and finally, Chief Justice of the United Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court. So a pretty illustrious political career.
Ups and downs, but I would say the ups outweigh the downs.
I would say so too, probably. Although his downs are some of the darkest downs in American history.
They are.
Him being
Japanese internment.
A major proponent of Japanese internment. That is one of the biggest stains on America's history.
You could argue that led to some more progressive decisions later on down the road, though.
Well, it's a good kind of maybe lesson in the ability for people to reflect on their decisions and maybe learn to be better, because Warren went on to run what I think a lot of people would agree a hugely progressive court at a time when America needed the court to be just that. Jim Crow had to be dealt with. The racial divide had to be dealt with. It was a tea kettle that was about to fucking boil over. And
as far as the Warren Commission shit goes, I feel like there wasn't really much he could do.
I mean, yeah, he was. You could tell, like, through political jockeying, he was kind of shafted into doing it, and he was absolutely right about why maybe it should be done differently. There was already a preliminary report that had been submitted that explained basically everything the Warren report did, but Johnson was emphatic that there had to be a thorough and complete investigation into this, and that it had to be led by Chief Justice Earl Warren. So,
you know what we should have done? We should have just fucking been like, all conclusions lead to Johnson planned the assassination.
Oh my God.
And then Johnson would be like, we're burying this report. We're burying this report. It's like, yeah, that's right,
This
bitch.
report is a lie.
Don't fucking saddle me with some dumbass bullshit. I'll fuck you up.
That would have been fucking crazy. So 5 years into his retirement, Warren died due to cardiac arrest at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C. on July 9th, 1974. He had been hospitalized since July 2nd due to congestive heart failure and coronary insufficiency. On that same day, he was visited by Justices Brennan and Douglas. Warren could not resist asking his friends whether the court would order President Nixon to release the 64 tapes demanded by the Watergate investigation. Both justices privately assured him that the court had voted unanimously in U.S. v. Nixon for the release of the tapes. Relieved, Warren died literally a few hours later.
How's Tricky Dick doing? Oh, he's fucked. All right.
Yep. That's literally how it went down. He was safe in the knowledge that the court he had so loved would force justice on the man who had been one of his most bitter foes. So the decision in that case was unanimously in favor of forcing Nixon to release those tapes. On August 5th, 1974, Nixon released a transcript of one of the additional conversations to the public, known as the smoking gun tape, which made clear his complicity in the Watergate cover-up. This disclosure destroyed Nixon politically. His most loyal defenders in Congress announced that they would vote to impeach and convict Nixon for obstructing justice. Republican congressional leaders met with Nixon and told him that his impeachment and removal were all but certain. So thereupon, he gave up the struggle to remain in office, resigning the presidency at noon on August 9th, 1974.
I am not a crook.
Yeah, and he kind of didn't give the House a chance to ever vote on his article of impeachment.
Better to resign than get impeached, right? So
yeah, I guess here at the end, I would ask you guys, I guess we already started to kind of go into it, but what do you think about this very controversial and under discussed political figure?
He seemed like a guy with tremendous political acumen. He had an ability to play both sides. I think it became clear more and more throughout his life which side he was kind of more on. He fought for a lot of things that, if he hadn't been there to fight for them, maybe American history would have fucking shaped up very differently. Maybe the racial problems in America would still be more deeply entrenched.
Probably so.
He made some mistakes along the way, but who the fuck doesn't? Seems like a complex historical figure that I would err, at least by what's presented here. I'm no expert, obviously, but
a lesson in the power of persuasion and something that's kind of eroded in our country, which is like public service. And I think it almost is very alien to us because we live in such a very partisan time, and he lived in partisan times, was able to somehow overcome that. So it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic play out when people talk about our current political system and paradigm. It has to be this way.
Well,
this is how
we're sold this story of political gridlock that's just unbreakable gridlock or whatever. But is it really? Or did people
of course not.
did people just stop doing this kind of politics? Because both Earl Warren and LBJ, who we covered in this, and a number of other political figures, did a whole lot of jockeying and pressuring and fucking outright yelling and belittling to get done what was on their agenda. And I just don't see that happening anymore in politics. You know what I mean? I really
it's
don't.
Ping pong now, right?
Happening,
it just goes back and forth. Oh, it's their fault. No, it's our fault. Oh, it's their fault. It's their fault. Oh, it's like, well, no, actually, it's both of you guys' faults because no one is getting anything done.
I mean, if you look at our fucking president, if you look at most recent presidents, I mean, you had right now we have just like nattering sort of like mush mouth nobody.
Grandpa who is just senile and lost.
Just like, can you imagine him trying to intimidate anyone or anything like that? I can't. You had before that fake tough guy Trump. Before that, you had fucking people pleaser, nothing burger Obama. Before that, you had George W. Bush.
I think Obama at least had the potential to do that, though.
What if he popped up at the foot of your bed at night with this face on, though?
Okay, maybe
then I might be intimidated. Like, how do you want me to vote again?
Yeah, he's like, you're going to vote with me, Jack, right?
Okay, I guess I will. Just get out.
Yeah, if Joe does that roll, he's like, I'm gonna roll for intimidate. Okay, you show up. If he rolls a 20, then yeah, he shows up in your room just like as a spirit, and is all like, "You'll vote this way." Oh my god, I will. Please don't hurt me. Leave me alone. I'm scared. I'll vote however you want. Beyond that, though, it's like I feel like if he tried to intimidate you, he would fuck it up so bad it would just be like a comedy of errors. You know, I don't think he's capable of being coherent enough to fucking intimidate anybody at this
point. Where are these powerful figures in politics that are willing to risk great personal fucking like embarrassment and political failure and put themselves on the line to get shit done in this country and find ways to mend this quote unquote partisan divide that's been used as an excuse my whole life? Partisan gridlock. And it's true. Like, fucking Americans hate Congress because they never get anything done because people stopped doing this type of shit. This type of old politicking of like going one-on-one with these people and fucking like putting some leverage on them. Like, look, dude, I know what your aspirations are. I know you want to join fucking K Street, or I know you want to go back home to Virginia and get, you know, the attorney generalship and retire down there, or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Knowing something about what that person's political aspirations are, providing a way for them to get closer to it, or threatening them with removal of that possibility, or you know what I mean? Any other type of thing. You know, saying like, look, I know you want to move up in your political career. I'll get you a seat on this fucking commission. I'll get you a seat on this fucking Ways and Means Committee. Or
well, a lot of times too, it takes us like a few decades or like one generation removed or something before we start hearing the real story about what was going on behind the scenes and shit too.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but I
don't know. You know,
it doesn't seem like it's coming to any fruition anymore. If people are still
the problem is
it.
that, you know, it's not like like we haven't really seen much lately. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't seen these kind of sweeping, like probably the Supreme Court decision for gay marriage. That was a good thing, but that was kind of just predicated upon something this guy already did, you know, decades before with interracial marriages. And, you know, we haven't really seen a lot of sweeping reforms as of late. Like, things have been kind of like stuck. So I think that's why, you know, there's like this idea of like this gridlock has gotten to the point where like literally nothing's happening.
We have gridlock in all areas of government.
Right. And it's,
even the judicial branch, like we're talking about the Supreme Court, I mean, for very few decisions have been made that are really like, a lot of them just been punted like, oh, let's go back. The lower court can decide that. We're not going to. So it's like we have a government.
It just seems like every single person, regardless of party, pretty much is just trying to maintain a status quo. But all that's happening is the status quo is deteriorating because we're not willing to make big changes.
Because if there's one constant in life, is change.
Right. So and we're trying to stop it.
You're trying to hold on to some ethereal thing and it's floating away from you. And it doesn't matter how hard you try to hold or how soft you try to hold. It's just going to float away.
That's why I'm always so vehemently opposed to the status quo, because I think the status quo starts deteriorating the second it's born. That's the nature of the status quo. Human beings and what they expect the relationship between them and their government and them and their employer to be is a constantly shifting thing. And any attempt to govern those people has to be adaptable to that or allow the maximal amount of freedom in people's lives. And, you know, that just doesn't happen in modern times. You know what I mean?
It seems like it's just we're stuck. We're very stuck. And it seems like there's a lot of powerful forces that are trying to keep things freeze framed exactly how they are with
And I
very
gotta-
minimal change.
And I gotta believe on some level. You're right, Scotty. By the way, it's the guap always. But I gotta believe on some level that a strong enough, driven enough political personality or two. I mean, you can't have followed us through Earl Warren's political history and not believe that a single person can fundamentally, profoundly affect American history.
Yeah.
So it's just like we need maybe not Earl Warren, because I don't want to see Japanese people locked up, but we need a politician like this, or a group of politicians like this that have a fucking internal compass that doesn't just include lining their pockets. And make I
think this is like
what a thought today. What a thought today in American politics, because I don't see it.
I think that this is like in a lot of ways what appealed about Trump to people is like, because he kind of
can't be bought, right?
He kind of had I don't think he actually was that, but I think he was trying to project the illusion of that.
That was a big selling point to a lot of people. Like, how can Trump be corrupt? Because think about this. He's a billionaire. He already has all the money he could ever want, or anyone could ever want. He already lives a luxurious lifestyle. He doesn't need
anyone
their
who
money.
Thinks that doesn't understand the mentality of a
And then it was like, actually, like, Trump is probably one of the most corrupt presidents we've ever had. I don't want to say the most corrupt, because going back, I mean, there's some really corrupt presidents, but amongst the most corrupt. And he was better at corruption. If anything, like, if Trump excelled in anything in our government, it was corruption.
He's the best at it. Nobody knows corruption like him.
I know corruption. I know corruption. Corruption's my favorite thing.
Because he was already corrupt to begin with, and you give someone that's totally corrupt absolute power over the government. I mean, like, come on. It's just like, that's like a kid in a candy store. You just got to take whatever you want.
But yeah, things are fucked, and it doesn't look like they're going to get unfucked anytime soon. So I don't know.
Another thing that I kept fucking noticing, I don't want to belabor the point, but I kept noticing in this as I went through the research and kind of went through the show with you guys, was this realization that the more things change, the more they stay the same in terms of some of these political strategies and paradigms.
That's a cliche for a reason, right?
Right.
I guess after a while, if you've been around long enough, and I guess we're starting to get around to that point where we've been around long enough, you start to really notice, like, wait a minute, this has all happened before.
Well, that's why history,
times in a lot of cases,
the study of history is important. It really is. I mean, like, look, obviously there's a lot of disputes about things with historical events and shit, but there's common themes, especially in the last 500 years of human history, that we can see over and over and over again.
Like, because some of these things that happen seem like, whoa, this seems really super unprecedented. But then it's just like, you realize, like, no, I'm just ignorant.
Yeah.
This is not unprecedented at all.
I was definitely ignorant to a lot of the whole campaign by a right-wing think tank type of group to put up billboards excoriating somebody. You know what I mean? I thought that was like a relatively new development in American politics, but it turns out it's just always been there. It's
the one that fucked with me the most was because I really thought it was like a super unprecedented thing. Was like, he tried to resign from the Supreme Court his final year because he wanted to be replaced by Johnson and not Nixon.
Right.
But the Republicans totally blocked the nomination. They're like, no, we're not going to do it until we get a new president. And it's like, that's the same thing that happened with Obama and Merrick Garland and shit. And I thought that was like a super unprecedented thing. Nope. Turns out with fucking very easy semi-recent precedent.
The fucking ancient fucking turtle Mitch McConnell just went back to his memory banks, went, oh yeah,
let me run through my skullduggery file. I mean, really? Yes, 1969. That's right.
How did Nixon fuck him? Oh, good
Earl
job,
Warren
Nixon.
wanted to retire the poor old bat, but we kept him in office another 4 years with our obstructionism. We'll do it again, too. Oh, Mitch the Turtle must be defeated. Anyway, that's what I got on Earl Warren. Interesting show. Hope you liked it. If you did, let me know, and I'll do more of these kind of cool biography episodes.
All right, man. Dope. See y'all later.